What's up, everyone? My name is Chelsea, and welcome to Handcuff Status Podcast. On today's episode, we will be discussing restorative justice, what it means, and the various forms of injustice from our criminal system. We have an exclusive interview with Charles King. He's a restorative justice ambassador and the founder of Helping Others with Life organization. He will be sharing his experiences with us, so let's get right into it. Hi, Charles. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I'm super excited to talk to you.
Hey, how you doing? I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Great, thank you. So before we get started into the questions and stuff, I just want to know a little bit about yourself. If you can just tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Charles King. I'm a 42-year-old African-American male or man that lives in the United States. Single father, have a child that's in college, have a 20-year-old child that's a sophomore in college. Currently working a multitude of spaces. One of those spaces just so happen to be dealing with restorative justice. And I do that for DC government, as well as I provide restorative justice services for some private contractors here in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been dealing with restorative justice for like the last 7 years. I've been trained to train others for the last 3 years. So technically like the last 7 years, professionally, it's been professionalized in my life. But looking back at my life overall, I've always used these practices no matter what, just didn't have the right framework to characterize what it was that I was actually doing.
Just in your own words, how would you describe what restorative justice means or what it is to you?
For me, restorative justice is conflict resolution without using the draconian sentences in the judicial system as we know it today, and trying to resolve issues without the judicial system, and also having the opportunity to use this method of resolution even inside of the judicial system. I've had opportunities to use this method even when dealing with the court system.
Today we'll be talking a little bit just about your background. I know you went through you spent 13 years. Was that correct in prison?
Yes, I spent 13 years in prison. I was arrested in 2003. I was released back into the community. I returned back to the community in 2016. If you count what we have here is a halfway house. I was sent to the halfway house to complete the remainder of my sentence for the last year of my sentence. But technically, my official release date was June 20th, 2016.
Okay, so you officially left the jail or prison at 2015, but you were released from the system altogether in 2016.
16, yes.
Okay.
And upon my release, I wasn't officially completely free.
Right.
I was released, but I was put on probation. I had a 5-year term of probation to follow the sentence that I was given.
If you don't mind taking us back to like the day that you were arrested and what that felt like.
I was arrested May 17th, 2003. I apologize. I was about to say 2013. Excuse me for this happened. But I was arrested May 17th, 2003. Young man into some illegal activities, made the choice to, be an entrepreneur in the wrong way,
Right.
instead of the way. But, it was basically a situation where I was stopped by the police. All my credentials was correct, but they still proceeded to violate my rights. And I was arrested with a firearm and some narcotics here in Washington, D.C. During my time of, getting arrested, the way that I felt, I was kind of oblivious to the judicial system, oblivious at that stage of the judicial system. I really believed in the judicial system. I believed that if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That, justice will serve me. But, as we continue to go into the story, I can elaborate more onto that. But on the day of my arrest, I had sufficient funds, so I felt like this was a matter that can be dealt with in a proper way. I can have it addressed in a proper way because I can get the representation that I need in order to address this matter and get it resolved.
What was the most challenging aspect of like your trial process? Like you said, you described getting arrested, but after that, and what was that like? And then also, what was like the most challenging part going through the trial?
So the most challenging part for me was becoming enlightened, getting information as a people, especially a person who may not be involved in the judicial system in no form or fashion, legitimately. I really didn't know what the court system looked like. So I started to educate myself during my incarceration. I wasn't allowed to return home and litigate my matters in the community. I was held in custody. So I was, going through the process in custody. I started to learn things about the judicial system. So I really felt that I had a good opportunity to resolve this favorably. When I got to the trial process, I went to trial actually two times in federal court here in Washington, D.C. for this matter. The first time that I went to trial, it ended in a mistrial, which the jury couldn't come to a full conclusion. And when they actually polled the jury, 9 jurors felt that I was not guilty. 3 jurors felt that I was guilty. That was in October of 2003. December 2004, December 2003, I apologize. My second trial started. I went to trial. I was flabbergasted because the police officers completely changed their statements, their comments, and then when we approached them with those previous statements or comments that they made on record, they told their justification was it was a misspeak, or that isn't what I meant, or that wasn't. I want to clean that up now, and it was allowed to happen. A lot of people don't understand that the court process isn't what we see on TV. TV has a Hollywood thing. The court is a whole different ball game, right? I really just believed in the process, but after the second trial, when we went into deliberation, they actually deliberated for like 3 or 4 days, and they kept on coming out telling the judge that they was deadlocked. They couldn't reach a verdict. And the last time that they sent them back, they reached a verdict, which ultimately led to me being convicted and found guilty. From that point on, the process continued. I continued to fight. The following year, I was sentenced to a total of 211 months in federal prison. Throughout that time, I continued to litigate my case, and I did get some relief at some point of time during that litigation, maybe 5 years after the conviction. I got some relief, but it was at the time I looked at it as minor, but in hindsight, looking back, it was major because I look at where I could have still have been if I didn't get the relief that I got, through the litigation of trying to get my case overturned.
What was it like in there? Were you doing research on your own? Did you have like, your lawyers, or like were you doing anything on your own that helped you with your case at all?
Oh yes, I actually lived in a library.
Okay.
I'm not one to entrust someone with something that I'm not aware of. But I did have representation that I had retained to deal with my matter on appeal. So while I was appealing my sentence and my conviction, I also had the opportunity to not just go in a law library and start to obtain information and knowledge for myself. I was able to actually help others while I was there to get some relief in certain instances, to regain their freedom, or help them to get reductions on their sentence, and etc. Whatever that may look like, if I was in a position to point them in the right direction,
Right.
or help them formulate, what they wanted to say, whatever that may have looked like. And I still do it to this day. People still call me to this day and ask me legal questions in order to try to help them resolve current matters.
That's impressive. I like that. That kind of leads right into my next question regarding like resources and stuff. Is there a specific type of resource in there when you're inside, for those who are inside, or do you just have to go out and do it on your own? Or do they is there a specific type of program or resources to help people research their own cases, or just,
So they actually have a law library. When I first entered the system back in 2004, the law library was starting to transition from books to digital.
okay.
With the books, you had to, of course, look a case up, go find the binder, that edition, pull it, whatever that may be like. And, but the problem with that was you have some inmates that's currently incarcerated that's actually working on their case. And I can give you a couple of scenarios. You have some inmates working on their case. They may want that case, they may tear it out the book. So you may go look for the same case, and that book
Oh
isn't,
my
the case isn't in the book.
Right.
You also have situations where individuals may have been involved with a case, and you're looking for that case, and an individual may be involved with that case who had done something unfavorable, may have told on someone or something, and that information is in that case, so they might tear it out the book, right? So when they went into the digital age of things and started getting the computer system, which was LexisNexis and Westlaw. Once they did that, it really became more easy to navigate. Even if you weren't computer savvy, you started to have that transition for those individuals who may have spent a large portion of time, or just been an individual because technology wasn't what it is today, right? In 2004, there was no social media. The internet wasn't available on your hip as it is today, or in your pocket for the most part. Navigating the computer, you weren't learned that, and it became easy. That was a resource that was provided, but it wasn't something that was mandatory that you go do. It was just an opportunity if you chose to go over there and pursue the work on your case. It was there for the most part.
What was the most significant change in your life while you were in jail?
Um, the most significant change in my life while I was incarcerated was the birth of my son. He was born while I was incarcerated. So I was incarcerated in May of 2003. He actually was born February of 2004.
Okay.
So I was never out during none of her pregnancy years of during none of her pregnancy months, excuse me, of her, going through that situation with him through those trimesters before his birth. That changed me. That was a big factor of a change because I understood that I had a responsibility to someone outside of myself with the birth of my child, understanding that he didn't ask to be here, and it was my responsibility to make sure that I provide the person, the man, the father, and the support that he may need as he continued to transition and grow in life.
That's probably a big motivation to help get out. So I'm guessing the research and making sure that you get all the stuff together to help with your release, and that's like a big motivation. I have kids myself, so I can understand. I can get where you're coming from with that part. What was your initial steps that you took towards healing or making like amends as part of your restorative justice process?
I think that the initial steps that I took was accepting responsibility
Okay.
of my lifestyle.
Right.
What I did understand is I was living a lifestyle that led to that. Even though I was violated in that situation, it's a saying that, hey, I went to jail for something I really didn't do, right? But overall, all the stuff that I've done that I didn't get arrested for, it's a lifestyle, it's a pattern, it's a habit. We're creatures of habit as humans, right? We do something repetitiously, and if it works, we continue to do it until it don't work anymore. That's relationships, jobs, etc. Right? And I woke up every day with the mentality of doing what I was doing. So in order for me to, have healing with myself and understanding what myself was, look at all the days that you got away without getting caught. You finally get caught, and this is the result. I call it paying taxes because when you're on the street, there's no taxes.
Right.
To the illegal gains that you make. So everyone will pay taxes at some point in some form or fashion.
Right.
And that was my form of paying taxes. If it's a very high tax.
So let's fast forward through the past through the 13 years. You're released. You're no longer incarcerated. What was that like? That first day out, like what was that like for you?
Different, but not too much different. Only because I had a very strong support system,
Okay.
so I was always kept abreast of what the world was doing,
Right.
what was
Right.
going on. You watch television, so I had some familiarity with some of the things that was going on in society. It wasn't like I was in a dark hole somewhere, locked off with no communication or completely isolated. At that first day out, I came home from a prison in Michigan. Mind you, I live in Washington, D.C., which was about a 7 hour, about give or take 7, 8 hour commute. Just walking out of the prison, I had my family, two of my family members waiting for me in the parking lot. And I actually took off the clothes that I had on, prison
Right.
guards, and threw it on the floor, literally right there, undressed everything and got redressed in the parking lot.
Right.
So that was an experience in itself. The clothes felt different. Society looked different. The cars was different. You got to remember, can just get in the mind frame of leaving the streets and a car, what it looked like in the inside, and the technology that was available inside a car inside of 2003 as opposed to the technology inside of a car in 2015.
Big difference.
It was a most definitely a big difference. Even though I had been looking at magazines and reading newspaper articles and things like that, it still wasn't that, right. That was something in itself. So that was something that was different. And the experience of phones locking, the phone was locking.
Right.
Like, I was like, I want to call some people, like, cuz your phone, right?
Right.
And they opened it, and he had a tic tac toe. I never forget, he had a tic tac toe screen, right? And he was like, you got to do this, right? So I would use the phone, and then I'll sit there for a minute because we ride, and then when I go try to use the phone again, it's locked. And I did that probably about 4 or 5 times. And I kind of like, man, why the hell your phone keep locking, man? I just came from all these locked doors, and now your phone locking, like
Right.
you
Right.
tripping.
That was
Because you got to understand, I've never seen a smartphone. I
right.
never had access to a smartphone. That was my first time ever touching a
Right.
smartphone in my life. I had never seen social media. I have never seen Facebook. I had never seen Instagram. None of that at that time. This is 2015. So I think that was the biggest aha, the biggest paradigm shift, the biggest reality check was those things that I just mentioned. Walking out of the prison, that day, and then going to a rest stop to get something to eat. I'll never forget we stopped at a Panera Bread. I didn't know what to order, so I allowed them to order my food. But I'm looking around the rest stop and people in the rest stop, and they're looking at their phones, and
Right.
and I remember tapping my family member and saying, "Hey, like." So if a person tell you they really ain't see it, they really ain't see it. Cause ain't nobody in here looking up. He's like, yeah, people don't be looking up. Like being in prison, you're alert all the time. You're paying attention to your surroundings because of just the environment that you're in, right? But that was probably the biggest adjustment on my first day.
Yeah, technology was actually going to be one of my next questions. Is like, how was that like the shock of when you went in, it wasn't to where it was when you came out. Like, adjust. I know you guys have computers, but like everything else.
So the computers in there have no internet access. The information that we get in the law library is uploaded by the
Okay.
staff in the education department. I don't know how often, but it is uploaded often enough for it to be relevant.
Right.
I think the biggest shock of technology for me was the phones understanding gigabytes
Hmm.
and how much storage space and that type of stuff, along with needing an email address to sign into everything. Like put your email in. Like I start like. Well, why the hell they keep asking me for an email address and in complete transparency? Honestly, I was just putting anything in there first, just signing it,
Just to sign in.
right? Yeah, I didn't understand the
Right.
significance of
Right.
if I get locked out or I get another device that I need that information in order to transfer my information over to this new device.
Right.
So, those was I think the biggest hurdles for me, just being able to process that situation of what that actually looks like.
And I know you touched on this a little bit that you had a huge support system while you were incarcerated, but I just want to go a little bit more into like your family dynamic. Like how did it change at all while you were incarcerated versus when you came out? I know you got to meet your child and all that, but with like the family members who you had before going in and then coming out, knowing that your mindset may have been changed a little bit, how were your relationships coming out?
So my relationships was a little different. Actually, my cousins who actually picked me up from federal prison, they came home from federal prison in 2004. So when I was starting my federal sentence, they were ending theirs. So they was there from that point all the way up to today. Like they're more like my brothers than my cousins,
Right.
but they was there throughout that whole process with me. And we had the opportunity to navigate that situation. And they was very familiar with it because they had just came from it. So it was an easy transition as far as that. As far as other family members, I lost family members during the course of that time. Life goes on with companions and things like that during that time. And I just was the type of person who was never bitter. Just look, I'm trying to do this sentence, get home, and restart my life. I'm not the guy that was in there really like, worried about too much of what's going on the other side of the fence, other than are you okay? Anything outside of that, I don't even have any control over your health, but it was a relief for me to hear that you was okay. If I or you call or I call you and you pick up the phone.
Mhm.
If I call you a couple of days, you don't pick up the phone. Now I'm worried because now I think that you might not be okay.
Right.
It's just out because it's out of the routine, right? And vice versa. We might go into a lockdown in there where my family members may get worried because they haven't heard from me in a day or a week or a month. You can be locked down for undetermined amount of time, and if you don't have any stamps or you're not in a position to send a letter out for those who may be not able to write, not able to read, right? I'm blessed to have those abilities, but it's also the process of putting it in the mail, not our mail, but the institution mail, and then the correctional officers sealing your mail up after they read it and sending it out. So whenever they get around to that, so I just think that my mindset most definitely had changed from the time that I walked in to the time that I
Right.
walked out. I think that throughout that time, some people thought that it was a fad or it might have been a phase because people go to prison and they talk good, and then they come home and their actions are completely contrary to what they may have said.
Right.
But for me, I remember telling certain individuals, my vision of coming home and just staying free and getting a job. And I remember vividly, individual told me, "Man, you just talking jail
Right,
shit."
because you're in there. You're saying
Yeah.
anything right now.
So it was a balance.
Right. And you said something, and this is may not be really related to you per se, but it's curious to know for those who are incarcerated who may not be able to read or write, like how does that work for them if you know the answer to that?
Um,
Like if they get letters from family or they want
man, being having finding somebody that's a safe space.
okay.
right? I can personally attest to an individual that I know that was incarcerated with me, an older gentleman too. Right now I'm 43. I'm 42. He has to be every bit of 60 something at this time. But 10 years ago he might have been 50
Right.
something. I was 30 something. And I remember he used to get mail and I would read the letters to him and then he would tell me, man, or he'd come and tell me, man, I'm trying to write these people
Okay.
back. And when he come in, I have him sit there and I have him tell me what he want to say, and I'll dress it up and put it in a letter and read it back to him afterwards because he can verbally understand what I'm saying. And yeah, that's good. That's good. That's what I want to say. We seal the letter up, put the envelope, put the paper in there, put the stamp on it, and we mail it off.
Right.
But finding somebody, that you can be vulnerable with in that space that they won't throw that back in your face at no time because relationships can sour or every day not going to be a good day in there. And, people will weaponize things against you that they may know in society as in prison.
I love that. And what would you say is like a misconception about those incarcerated, like from people us on the outside? Like, what do you think is a big misconception that we may have?
I think that some people think that prison is that they have it easy. Y'all got three hats and a cap, right? You got three meals and a roof over your head. Yeah, I do. But do you understand what I have to pay for
Mm,
this room and board?
okay.
The cost of it, right? I pay with my life. I'm paying with my time. Something I can never get back. I just think that sometimes people just get it misconstrued and don't really understand the mentality or the mental strength that it takes in order to get through that. They just think that it's a in and out thing. And I think that sometimes people think that they're completely okay that people in prison, oh, he all right. But like you got a lot of mental health in there. You got a lot of different issues in there that aren't addressed because they aren't there to address your mental health. They
Right.
don't care about your mental health, right? We're not here for mental health. We're just here to house you. You got a correctional officer in the middle of a rural area, say West Virginia or Kentucky or somewhere, right? And this is lucrative. This is a big business. Before this prison came, he was probably a coal miner. He might have worked at the gas station down the street. Now he has the opportunity to make 60, 70, $80,000 a year. We're in that environment and in that geographical location. That's a lot of money. If a house is 40,000 and you're making 80 a year, right? That's without overtime or 70,000, whatever. So, it's also that people just think that it's easy. But I think that if they understood what we went through or what we go through. And of course, we're being held responsible for our actions. And, so a lot of people feel like you shouldn't be crime. If you can't do the crime, don't do the time. But, as time continues to move on and society continues to evolve, people are starting to address those ills that I'm speaking of mental health inside of prisons, better conditions, trying to get a person closer to home. I'm from DC. Imagine me being in a federal prison in California, right? It's a time difference. I got to specifically get the phone at a certain time because we're 3 hours behind in Cali or we're 3 hours ahead, whatever it is. No, we're 3 hours behind in Cali from DC. So if I call you at 6 in the morning, it's 9 in the morning here. You feel what I'm saying? If I get out there and I get the phone, if I just so happen to get the phone there at 9 o'clock, I got to remember it's midnight here. People got to go to work. Kids got to go to school.
Right.
So those are some of the misconceptions about individuals who are incarcerated.
You talked about mental health, or you touched on it slightly. Now in today's society, mental health is a big topic. Everybody's talking about mental health and making sure that we check ourselves. When you went in at that time, like, was it a big deal, or was it being talked about at all? And how did you guys deal with that? Like, if you say you felt down for a day or two, or you had like time where you were not feeling like yourself, now you could check that, be like, hey, let me check my mental health. Then what was it like for you, or for men incarcerated? Do you think, what is it like?
I don't think that mental health was even a topic.
Right.
More specifically in communities of people who look like, and no disrespect to anyone else, but you look like me, right? From communities that we come from, mental health was not a topic,
Right.
right? It was he's crazy,
Hmm.
or he has issues, or he's just using drugs, not realizing that individuals using drugs are self-medicating, where other individuals may have accessibility to proper diagnosis and drugs that they need in order to address those issues. So, like it was not a big thing around mental health when I went to prison. And right now, today, I still don't feel that it's as popular or professionalized as it need to be in those spaces. Because if it was, we wouldn't see these excessive sentences for some of these individuals for some of the crimes that they are charged with, without properly evaluating them and trying to figure out, is there some type of issue here? And that's one of the things that restorative justice do address. What are you going through
Right.
as the offender, right? A lot of times no one ever asks the offender, why did you do that, right? They just talk about what you did.
Right.
And just leaning back into that, if we had more people asking, why did that happen, or what was your mind frame when you did that, maybe we can address those issues. And those people who are high in recidivism and reoffending, maybe we can help them not have to reoffend or return to prison, because we understand their needs. But to send someone to prison isn't nothing but holding them. We can't arrest our way out of a situation. That just means I'm holding you for however amount of time. Then you go back home, you do the same thing. Then people call you crazy. Is it crazy or is it mental health?
That's a good question. So how did you now get you're released and you're back into society? What led up to you becoming an ambassador for restorative justice or getting into that? How did that
Um,
start for you?
I'm playing. I'm playing. Started working in the juvenile justice system, and it was something that they was implementing inside of the juvenile justice system.
Okay.
So I was trained for that. Working with juveniles in the juvenile justice system here in Washington D.C. I was trained for that, and we use restorative justice to try to resolve conflicts inside of the facilities and outside in the communities. Because, of course, as with anything that has a urban street dynamic to it, there will be conflict. There's never been such thing as a poor, peaceful community, right? So how do we resolve that? Because the police can't. It might not be an arrestable offense, but it may be in a posture where it may be going there to be a hostile. So how do we be proactive? And one of the proactive approaches is using some of the skills and tools from restorative justice to address those issues before we get to the point of a conflict happening. And if a conflict happened, then also get into the posture of trying to resolve that conflict and, you know, get people back into a good place.
So, looking back, what would be your advice to somebody who is currently facing what you went through into like 2003?
No matter what happens, don't become discouraged. Every day that you wake up, it's another day to get it right. And know that you can have the opportunity to return back to your community at some point. It might not be when you want to, but you will have the opportunity. So take care of yourself. Take care of your mind, your body, your soul, if you're spiritual, and stay focused and stay out of goofy and crazy stuff, so that you don't wind up being there longer, or you don't put yourself in a position where you're hurt or you have to hurt someone.
And what would you say your path to redemption or your path to where you are now? And what steps did you take and what would you advise somebody else to do to get their life on track?
So the steps that I took was just being committed and being a man of my word,
Right.
fully committing to whatever it was I chose to do.
Right.
When I made the choice to commit to change, I gave it 100%, and I allowed positivity to flow into my life based upon the actions I was taking. I believe whatever you engage in, you'll see the results of it. If you're throwing rocks at a building, you'll eventually knock out a window, right? So if you're doing positive, you'll eventually start to get positive back. And with today's society and the platforms that's available and afforded to us, like social media such as Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, if you're doing positive, I would recommend it. Put it on those platforms, let others see that, share it so that you can build your foundation and your network up. You'll be surprised at who supports you, who come out and champion your cause, knowing you knowingly or unknowingly of you before or now. You'll get people who just, consistency, they see it, and they, opportunities open. So that would be my thing for an individual who's trying to make that transition today. If they're trying to make it, just find that tribe that you need in order to fit what you're trying to do. You can't hang with people from. I've never seen a whale hang with a giraffe.
Right.
Impossible, right? You attract what you are and you reap what you sow, right? If you don't plant anything, don't expect the harvest. And if you do plant something, expect the harvest to be what you planted. So if you plant negativity, expect negativity to come back out of the ground. If you plant positivity, expect positivity to come, right? And I say expect, because we can only have expectation until we see the results. I can plant positive, negative can come out, but that don't mean that the root of this plant is all negative. There's some positive things. I know what I planted. So if it does produce negativity, cut that off, allow it to regrow and see what comes next.
So at the beginning, you mentioned something, and it's been sticking with me throughout this entire interview, um, because I feel like a lot of young boys nowadays, or have just this mentality that if I have enough money, I can buy myself out of this situation, or I can, like that's what you said your mentality was at the time. What would you say to a young man who's watching this right now who thinks that way?
Money is a tool, right? It's a tool, but just like all tools, you can't use it for everything. I can't use a hammer to put in a glass. It's just not feasible. I'll break the glass. Money is a tool, and it'll only be able to fix certain things. You need to make sure that you got all the tools that you need in order to be prosperous in life. And if you think that money is the tool that's going to fix everything, then you're probably doomed and destined to go through a turbulent time until you realize the money is only a tool that can fix certain things. There's certain places money can't get you. Only relationships can get you in certain doors. And that's just because that's the way the world is set up. I know millionaires that can't go into underserved communities because, yeah, you got the money, but you ain't got the respect.
Right.
Right. So, for those who may think that money is the end all be all, I would ask you to reevaluate that. For those who may be watching this or come across this at some point, to reevaluate that and understand that it's only a piece of the puzzle of the whole picture. Having money is only a tool. Fill your toolbox up with all the tools you need in order to make it through life. And the most important tool is human relationships, your social capital.
Before we wrap up, can you just mind touching a little bit on your organization, just for us to know what it is?
So I have an organization here in Washington D.C. called Helping Others with Life, which is on. I have a website, HOWLDMV.com. I help out around the city every year on my birthday, which is June 17th. I feed people of this, less fortunate and underserved positions, specifically what some may call homeless, but I just call them people in need. Every year, I've been doing that for like the last seven years, so this will be like my eighth year this year. I do that on my birthday, but I address any type of need that I may see fit, and if I have the resources, I make sure that I provide those resources. And if I don't have the resources, I try to connect individuals or entities with those that may have the resources or the ability to help them in that space that they're in.
And for anyone watching who may want to reach you, I know you said your website, but any other social media that you want to just, if someone wanted to reach you,
Um,
help out in any way?
yes, I have. I do have a Instagram page for my nonprofit, which is Helping Others with Life on Instagram, and I have an Instagram for myself, Boobie Boobie 617. I'm on there, and my email address and everything is hooked up to my Instagram for my nonprofit, as well as if you go on my website is connected to my email. Is connected to my email, and it's connected to my nonprofit organization page. So, if someone wanted to reach me, it would be no problem. I try to respond diligently. I got 1,000 things going on, but I try not to be overwhelmed and be prompt on, getting back at people at a feasible time.
The last question I have for you is, if there's just one thing that resonates with you the most, or just one thought that you can think of to just let somebody know, uplifting, any type of thing that you can think of, somebody watching who may be a younger self, like if you were to talk to your younger self or just a younger person, and you had to give them like one encouraging thought, what would it be?
It's not over as long as you got life in your body. I've been through a lot. I've been paralyzed from the waist down. I've been shot. And I've had the opportunity to resolve that conflict with the individual that shot me, and not through the court system, but through a personal matter, just having a conversation. So never say that you can't. Never say it's too late. Never say we can't resolve something. Respect and appreciate life, no matter what. All life has value, even the life that you may feel doesn't have value. All life has value. So make sure that you appreciate life. Treat everybody as if it's your brother, your mother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, or someone that you actually love. And put that vision in your head when you're talking to somebody. And before you do something drastic, really think about it and make sure that, I believe in self preservation. But if it isn't about self-preservation and it can be avoided, please avoid it. Please avoid it, because when things happen, it impacts more than just the individual that's involved. All parties are involved. Your family's impacted. Their family's impacted. It's just too many people impacted. And I just think that we've been desensitized to violence at this point because it's oversaturated on social media, television, YouTube, etc., to the point that people don't value human life as, one once was valued. So just value human life. Don't get caught up in the hype.
Don't get caught up in the hype. Thank you so much for that. I love it. This was a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking to you, Charles. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here with us on Handcuff Status Podcast. We would like to thank Charles King for sharing his story with us today. For all those incarcerated, remember, freedom is a must. Free all the lifers, and shout out Private Spaceship. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and follow at Handcuff Status Inc. on all major platforms. If you have any questions or suggestions, send it to us, and never forget our mission: breaking the chains of injustice.